Can we just let this trope die? The one where a character is written to be young, impulsive, and or hot-headed. If you know the exact name for this trope, please tell me. This is the second half of the Castamar commentary. If you missed the first half, please circle back after watching this. I think you'll find I praise the series more there than the pummeling I'm about to give it now. La Cocinera de Castamar is a 12-episode series about the private lives of Spanish aristocracy set in the time period where men wore heels. I think I've said this before in another video, but I can't stand overly sensitive people who are physically incapable of holding back their emotions, always to their detriment and to those in their immediate vicinity. A character flaw reserved for people with too much privilege and very little common sense. Surely you can think of another way to move a story along without having to light the fuse on this powder keg. Youth need never be forever synonymous with willful stupidity. Perhaps this character was already written into the novel and the writing team had no choice but to honor it. But yuck, yuck, yuck. I'm talking about Gabriel, Diego's adopted younger brother. He was endowed with all of this foolhardy impetuousness, which is even more tragic because the fact that they made him black, if you can believe it. Let me solve for X right now. We get a flashback in the second half of the series where we see that Gabriel had been whipped before in his former enslaved life. He could have been 8 or 9 years old at the time, which means he was old enough to remember what those lacerations on his back feel like. Traumatic events like that hang around you no matter how pampered your life following that becomes. Or at least the feeling stays even if you block the memory. I dare say enough to have a lingering distrust for anyone who might vaguely look like the perpetrator, and enough to constantly be weighing everyone's good intentions as a safety mechanism, resulting in playing everything close. No matter how insular your life may become living in a gilded cage, as he so put it, there's no way I can believe he's managed to avoid racist, microaggressive encounters altogether since becoming a Castamar. He supports this on several occasions, offering to remove himself from public events for fear of making the guests uncomfortable due to his hue. Gabriel's story arc would have been a lot more believable if they had done this instead. In the story, he finds out towards the end of the series that he's in fact a blood relation Castamar, which, had he been informed during his growing years, it would have been the easiest defense for this massive character flaw. Because blood is thicker than water. Having years to chew on this piece of information would have no doubt justified his entitled bravado he steered himself with throughout the series. There's nothing more reassuring in this instance than genetic confirmation of one's birthright. Without it, a person can always feel out of place and conduct himself accordingly, regardless of the consolation of one's adoptive family. His position as a Castamar is even more unsettled because of the dangers of the day. A person of Gabriel's position would have spent years perfecting the art of diplomacy so as not to antagonize anyone who might be able to put him in bondage, especially with no evidence needed, regardless of his family's close kinship with the throne. Alternatively, had Gabriel been raised a Castamar from the womb, never having felt the lick of a whip, having known only the silver spoon, that would have also been motivation enough for him to behave the way he does, regardless of how many microaggressions he faced. I don't buy it. You can't sell it to me. If you haven't guessed it by now, I'm rather sensitive to the way black characters are written, and by extension how black culture is portrayed in the media. A consideration that makes it really hard for me to watch anything produced in countries with a relevant history of colonialism and slavery. The use of film and television being such an effective propaganda tool as it is, I'm well past the point of being able to dismiss the placement/conduct of black characters and the retelling of black stories in a negative light as accidental in any and all capacity. Everything becomes political for me. So much so that I can completely neglect the other potholes within the production, of which I may have no vested representational interest. Bearing all of this in mind, I'm going to continue to give La Cocinera de Castamar 4 out of 5 because as offensive as Gabriel Castamar's storyline was, it didn't eclipse the incendiary nature of the rest of the production. Every major arc in this series was outrageous in its own way, and every actor put their best foot forward. This bonfire was a glorious sight to behold. They're not all this long. See for yourself. Otherwise, here's the invitation that lets you know I'm back.